Oh my God, you guys, my mom's here. Mom, say hi to the listeners.
What listeners?
Oh my God, did you hear? Did you hear? Oh my God, guys. Jayke has a podcast. I can't believe Jayke has a podcast. Oh my God, Jayke has a podcast.
Oh my God, you guys!
What's up, everybody? My name is Jayke Workman, and this is Oh My Pod, you guys, a musical theater and pop culture podcast. You guys, I am coming to you live from the Trixie Motel in Palm Springs, California, and oh my God, I cannot even tell you how insanely beautiful this motel is. For anyone who doesn't know, first of all, you're living under a rock, but Trixie Motel is an iconic drag queen and makeup artiste. She's one of my ultimate all-time favorite drag queens, and she, on Discovery Plus, has her own TV show where she creates a motel based on her name, Trixie Motel, ergo Trixie Motel. And it is a fully realized, fully operational motel. And so for Christmas, my mom surprised me with a trip to the Trixie Motel, and we are here. We are staying in the Pink Flamingo Suite. You guys, it's everything. It's like a dreamland. It literally looks like the Barbie movie. I'm obsessed. So shout out to Jenny, hi mommy, for this incredible trip, and this shout out to Trixie Motel for this incredible motel. They blew it out of the water. It's amazing. If you ever get the chance to stay here, I cannot recommend it enough. And speaking of drag queens, we gotta dive into this week's BroadwayWorld recap because mama, we got drag queens coming to off-Broadway. It was just announced that direct from London's West End, we are getting Death Drop the Musical, an all-drag murder mystery starring none other than Jujubee and Willem. You guys, I cannot even tell you how freaking excited I am for this. Willem has been hinting that she's going to be in New York for quite a while, and everybody has been sort of wondering what's she going to do? Is she going to do a show? And so I'm so excited to share that she's going to be in Death Drop off-Broadway in New York City all summer long. And it's going to feature other New York City drag queens, Sugarcane, Kiki Balchange, Peaches Iman Cummings, Wang Newton, and Holly Stars are all going to join Jujubee and Willem in this show. I cannot wait to see it. It's going to be at New World Stages, and performances begin June 30th. So we got to check this out, girl. Especially because now more than ever, we need drag representation to remind us that drag is not bad, drag is good, drag is everything. Next, we of course have to talk about the iconic closing after 35 years on Broadway of The Phantom of the Opera. I was so sad to see this show go. I know it's had its incredible run and all good things must come to an end at some point, but that was my first Broadway show I ever saw. So it was really an incredible milestone and, a really heartfelt closing for everybody involved. I mean, the show has employed thousands of people over that 35-year run. And so it was really special to see so many people get to come back and revisit the Majestic Theater and celebrate the closing of their show. And a friend of mine, Emily Kawachu, was the closing Christine. It's amazing. So congrats to everyone involved with Phantom of the Opera. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're not going to be without the show for very long, but what an incredible milestone to close that iconic show. It was also just announced that the live capture of Waitress the Musical is going to premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival this year, which is so exciting. And I think it's awesome that for anybody who didn't get to catch the show in the 2 times that it ran on Broadway, it opened, closed, reopened, and closed again. Now you'll be able to see it with this incredible cast starring Sarah Bareilles, who obviously created the show. And I'm so excited for everybody involved. How special that they get to have their performance immortalized and, we'll be able to look back on it and watch it forever. And it does feature a friend of mine, Miss Charity Angel Dawson, who was my matron Mama Morton the second time I did Chicago on Broadway. So I'm so excited to see this recording. When I saw the show, I saw Betsy Wolfe play Jenna, which was absolutely fantastic. But I was bummed that I never got to catch Sarah Bareilles as Jenna. So I'm so excited for this. I think it's going to be incredible. We also got an exclusive first look at the promo photos for the new play Goodnight Oscar, opening this week on Broadway and starring Sean Hayes and a friend of the pod who is our very own guest for this episode, Mr. Alex Wyse. So you can check those photos out on the official BroadwayWorld Instagram. And lastly, you guys, it was just announced that Ariel Jacobs is going to lead Here Lies Love on Broadway in the role of the former Filipina First Lady, Imelda Marcos. She is joining the previously announced Jose Yana and Conrad Ricamora in the show, and the previews begin June 17th at the Broadway Theater. I'm really excited to see this one. I think it's going to be really beautiful, and I've heard incredible stuff about the story and the writing and music, so I think Ariel's going to be amazing in this role, and it's going to be a gorge show. And you guys, this has been the Broadway World Recap. Oh my pod, you guys. I am so excited to welcome my next guest. He is a Broadway actor, a producer, a writer, and an all-around gem of a human, and he is currently starring opposite Sean Hayes in the new play Goodnight Oscar on Broadway. Please welcome Mr. Alex Wyse.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jay.
How are you?
I'm good. It's so early. We're recording this so early.
We really said good night, Oscar, and good morning, Alex. So,
Oh, we really did. Yeah, but I'm happy to say good morning to you. I really am.
Yeah, so you're calling from New York City, I take it? You've got shows going on.
Uh-huh. Yep. We're in previews right now for Goodnight Oscar. I think we had our fourth preview last night. I think it was number 4. And as they say, number 4 is really when it locks in. When you really, when my performance is finished, no more changes.
Show's
I'm never
frozen.
making any choices. Yeah, the show's, they're still making changes, and I say, no changes. I just had my 4th preview. I'm frozen.
Well, I cannot wait to see the show. It's already, there's such a buzz around this show. I want to hear about it. Can you tell me about what it was like to join this show? Did you start from the very beginning with the show, or where did your journey with the show start?
So I started with this really when it transferred to Broadway. There was a whole run of this that they did at the Goodman Theater in Chicago, and that happened roughly a year ago around this time, maybe a little more than a year ago. And so most of the cast did it over there, minus 2 people, and 2 folks out of the 7 cast members. Were unable to do 2 people were unable to do this iteration of it, and so I am one of the new people to this production.
Yes.
I'm playing the role that my dear friend Ethan Slater played in Chicago, and Ethan, as we now know, is doing he's doing Bach in the Wicked movies.
Yes.
And so it's really exciting. And Ethan and I, we've had a nice little laugh over it because I once played Bach, and so it's kind of like we just switched roles.
Yes, totally. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice that we're also both very happy for each other, and that we can offer each other the kind of support and respect that I think is not often afforded to actors in this business.
Totally.
From the business itself, But it was nice that, when I got this part, I could call Ethan and say, hey, I want you to know I got this role. I understand this must not be an easy thing to say goodbye to this one thing, even though you have this exciting thing happening. But I wanted you to hear it from me. And Ethan could not have been more spectacular about it, and kinder and more supportive. And so it's actually, for me, it's a very sweet story about two friends supporting each other, even though it's a sort of weird little industry shift thing happening,
Totally. And I think that must have been freeing for you, because you get to then take on a sense of ownership over this that maybe you weren't as inclined to before you had that conversation,
Yeah, absolutely. What's funny too about how I heard about this show is, so about a year ago, Ethan and Emily Bergel, I met Emily on the set of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, because we were all there doing an episode together. me, Ethan, and Emily, and the three of us hung out for the day, and the two of them were telling me about this great play that they just finished, and and it was really nice to hear. I was like, "Oh, Graham, I'm so happy for you both. How this is so wonderful." But they're in the back of my mind. I'm also wondering, why am I hearing about this? And then I guess the gods were smiling down on me, and when this came my way, I felt like, oh my God. Like when this audition first came, I thought, wait a second, I think this is the fates knocking on my door. This feels like more than an audition. This feels like the next step I'm supposed to take.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I don't know. It was a nice little moment of coming into it for me, where I didn't feel unwelcome by what the universe had in store.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a stacked cast. Can you tell me about working with people like Emily Bergel and, of course, King of the Universe, Sean Hayes? How has it been to
He really is.
to dive into a rehearsal process and previews with somebody like Sean?
No, I'm happy to talk. It's very easy to talk about because this has been a very, very happy process. And it has been such a happy process for so many reasons, because Doug Wright is such an incredible writer,
Yeah.
because Lisa Peterson has been a beautiful leader for all of us and has been taken us on with such care and craft, but also Sean Hayes, who is, as you said, well, King of the Universe, is one of the funniest and kindest and just warmest, greatest leaders I've ever met, I've ever been blessed to work with. Sean sets that tone from the top, and every day is full of laughter, and every day is full of, there's no ego in the room. There's so much teamwork and togetherness. I mean, Sean is so funny. All we do is just laugh all day long. And Sean laughs at my jokes too. I make Sean laugh. Sean is so generous and really spreads all of that goodwill through the theater, and it's a very happy place to go to work. I'm never upset to be there. And everybody is fantastic. The whole cast: Peter Gross, Ben Rappaport, John Zrajeski, Emily Bergel, and who else is in the show? I forget.
Just a few.
Oh, and Marchant Davis, my love, my world, Marchant Davis, whom I love so much. It's just such a wonderful group of people. Yeah, I mean, we're telling this great story about this not very well-known figure in pop culture history. He's remembered by probably our grandparents' generation, but most of us don't know him. But he was so noteworthy, Oscar Levant, for going on these late-night talk shows and talking about his breakdowns and his addictions to pills, and the censors were going wild, and no one knew what to do with him. And he was this funny comic full of these one-liners, and at the same time this virtuosic pianist, and he was just this really interesting figure who pushed the envelope in some new ways for late night talk shows. And so this play takes a slice of that and takes this event where he goes on the Tonight Show, and things happen.
And it seems like, I have not seen it yet, but it seems like your role of Max has a really fun foil to Sean's character on that episode of The Tonight Show.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I play Jack Parr, he was like the Johnny Carson or the Jay Leno of his time.
Uh-huh.
Jack Parr, he was the main guy of the Tonight Show, and I play Jack Parr's new intern at the Tonight Show. And I'm this excitable, kind of scrappy kid who's like, very, very like Arpad Laszlo, and She Loves Me, I think is what my role feels like.
Try me.
Yeah, very much like that. And so a lot of the function of my character, I have some interesting things I get to do, but a lot of it is I am just there hanging out with Oscar Levant or Sean Hayes and just saying, like, tell me stories. What was that like? And getting him to engage. And so my role is I get to sit there and just be in scenes with Sean.
Bask in the glory.
Bask in the glory. And he's my main scene partner is Sean. I'm
Wow.
just bouncing off of him through the whole play. It's so cool.
That-
It's so fun.
That's so cool, and I'm just so happy for you. I think that you are so clever, not just as a performer, but obviously you are a writer and a producer. I want to hear about how maybe your being a writer and creator influences the way that you take on maybe acting in a new play.
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that making my own work, like for example, I have this movie that I just wrote and directed with Wesley Taylor. It's called Summoning Sylvia, and you
Yes.
can rent it anywhere now. It's on demand everywhere. So Summoning Sylvia, you should check that out. We can talk about that later if you'd like.
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah. But what's so great about having my own stuff is in a business sense, I'm less reliant now on other people to tell me whether or not I'm like chosen that day of the week.
Sure.
You know? We're all in this business. We're all waiting for people to say, "Hey, I pick you." But more and more, I'm just like, I don't need that. Screw you. I'm going to pick myself.
Totally.
I'm gonna make my own thing. I have my own 5-hour writing session today. I don't need your audition for some, whatever. So that's been really freeing and made me feel like so much more of my own, my own provider.
Totally.
Which has been really useful to me. But also, within acting specifically, it's been so awesome to learn about all these other disciplines as I'm putting on all these other hats. Like when I have, especially these past few years, as I've had my director hat on directing this movie. Now as an actor, I'm just so much more sensitive to the roles of everybody else. You know how as actors, sometimes we get in this mindset of like, feeling like the world is against us.
Of course, of course.
I think that also bleeds in because business-wise, often it does, like, the world is against us. We're waiting for casting directors to give us the time of day.
Sure.
Or whatever it is. And so then you step into a rehearsal room and it's hard, I think, to get rid of that mentality of like, I still need to prove myself. I still need to, and we still come from this place of a lack of power.
Yes.
And it's hard to remember that when you're in the rehearsal room, you actually are there working together with people. It's no longer the dynamic of people working against you or you needing to still prove yourself. But it's very hard to step away from that.
Totally.
At least that's my experience. And I think I used to really to be really adversarial more toward directors and feel like, well, they're just and almost replace a director with my issues about parents.
Sure.
Yeah. But now as I've been a director and I've actually felt all those different dynamics around me, or like I felt, two people way over yonder, they were having an argument, but because I was the director and I might not have even been in the room, it was somehow my fault. And I was like, oh, wow, interesting. Uh-huh. It's so interesting the way that people who are working beneath you are just going to blame the boss,
right?
No matter what that thing is. And so I'm so much more sensitive to understanding that we're all out here trying to do our best, that we're all people, that the people who are the writers and directors of the world are the ones who are usually getting blamed the most for a show's success or failure.
Yes.
Usually people don't want to blame actors. You're actually not going to find a lot of reviews in the world that say like, and this actor sucked. Most reviewers are gentle with actors and are tough as nails on writers and directors. I'm just more sensitive to all of these things and understanding that, for instance, when a stage manager schedules something that and then they didn't use you, it's not because that stage manager hates you and wants to ruin your day. They're just trying to balance out the 17,000 other things that are on their plate.
Yes.
So that was a long-winded way of saying that it's kind of opened up my vision to understanding the roles of everybody in the room and understanding that we're all there working together, and that the more we can understand we're not working against each other in a process, I think the more harmonious the process can be, and the more at peace you can be as an actor receiving their notes or understanding where they might be coming from.
Absolutely. And I mean, God bless stage managers, ASMs, all the the people keeping everything in line, because Lord knows we couldn't do it without them. Well, you mentioned summoning Sylvia. Will you tell me about that creative process, creating with your good friend, Wesley Taylor?
Yeah. Wes and I, we had done 3 seasons of a web series together, a digital series, which I like to say digital series because it elevates it.
Yeah, of course.
And one must be elevated. It's called Indoor Boys, and it's now streaming on Here TV. And we did that together, and we really wanted to level up and do the next thing together and see what we can do to take our creativity and our production value to the next level. So we basically got really into horror movies once the pandemic rolled around. I think Wes and I were meeting on Zoom every day during the pandemic and writing many different things. I mean, we've been doing that for several years, but the pandemic, we dug in even further because all of the bullshit kind of went away, and we could just kind of focus on the stuff we really wanted to focus on. So we started, I think it was during Halloween of 2020, and it was when horror movies were just kind of always on the television. And we had already written a couple of other projects just from our daily writing sessions and just going, as much as we can. It was like a marathon against ourselves. And then we were waiting on these other things to be made. Point is that we got into horror movies, and we basically thought, what if we took our ridiculous queer characters and we put them into a haunted house, and then we could figure out what we wanted to say sort of about ourselves, about queerness, about the world. How could we make it as funny as possible? How could we make our haunted house comedy? And so that's what we started doing. And then of all the projects we had been writing, that was the one that just started flying.
Cool.
And so we followed the breadcrumbs, really. So we went into production and we filmed it in the summer of 2021. It was the hardest thing we have ever done. It was so hard because we had to level up in so many ways. We had to learn how to manage so many more people. Mm-hmm. We had to learn all these new departments. It was so exciting, and it was so cool to get to sit in the driver's seat and be challenged on a daily basis and learn things about digital imaging, compositing, as well as learning how to best give an actor a note, right. as well as figuring out what clothing is going to best represent these characters and what shot will tell the story of the bigger picture. It was just so cool to be challenged like that every day. Yeah. And so now we have Summoning Sylvia, which has been doing really well, and we're getting good reviews, and Yay. And we're really proud. We're really proud of what we made. You should check it out. It's with Frankie Grande and Michael Urie, Travis Coles, Vianne Cox. Just such a wonderful group of people we're so excited that we could take our next step, and we're still gonna work on taking even bigger steps as we go.
Yes, that's amazing. I mean, it's funny. Obviously, that cast is like full of people who I adore, but Vianne Cox is one person who I just am in awe of from afar. Like, she obviously has no idea who I am, but I'm like secretly obsessed. So I can't wait to check it out.
No, like, isn't she the greatest? She's so funny. She's so neurotic. She is so creative, mm-hmm. and the warmest, most wonderful person. who just makes me laugh over and over and over. And also the great Carolee Carmello is on our soundtrack.
Icon
we really,
of the Broadway.
yeah, we love working with the great ladies.
Of
you know?
course. You and Wes included in those great ladies.
Yeah, we should be so lucky.
So you obviously collaborated with Wes on that, and you have, I think, sort of created this path for yourself of collaborating with people who you love to work with, one of which obviously is another dear friend of yours, Mr. Ben Fankhauser, and you guys created the show A Commercial Jingle for Regina Comet, which I had the pleasure of seeing off-Broadway, and it was absolutely, first of all, it was ridiculous because you guys both sing the house down boots. Just, it's like dumb, but like it's so brilliant and clever. Can you tell me about what that creative process was like?
Sure, and thank you. I remember when you came; it was so good to see you there. It meant a lot to see you there. Well, I mean, for the listeners, Ben and Jayke and I did a show together. We did the Flamingo Kid at Hartford Stage, and that's where we all met.
Yes, indeed.
So Ben and I, we were friends back in high school. I knew him from growing up in Cleveland, and so. And then the Flamingo Kid really brought us back together in a great way. And so from there, Ben and I, right after that show, we were a little frustrated career-wise about, what are we doing? There's nothing happening for us. We were both just feeling a little... So we started writing this show together, and we wrote it also through the pandemic. And then... And it was a show about friendship and about our inner divas and and about sort of finding yourself in the midst of this ridiculous thing called show. And we wanted to make it as silly and ridiculous and just fun and heartwarming as possible. And then we were the first new musical to open off-Broadway after the pandemic, which was really cool.
Yes.
Scary, and I sometimes think that people came to that show and they weren't quite ready to laugh, but I think that's something that counted against us, and I wonder what would have happened had we opened a year later.
Sure.
But I'm really proud of the show. I think, what can I say? We were ahead of our time.
You were.
But we were so happy to have this show that we wrote together that was just full of jokes and silliness and friendship vibes. That was the whole vibe of the thing. It was just like about, being pals. And so you can listen to our cast album now, but it was just so awesome to collaborate.
Good. The cast album is ridiculous, you guys. And I have to tell you too, the show is 3 people. Features 3 performers. Like,
yeah,
it is a marathon for the people involved. So I was like thrilled beyond the moon to get to see you guys both do that show. It was a comedic masterpiece. The singing again was ridiculous. I loved that show, and you guys had an incredible off-Broadway run. I was just so proud.
It went pretty well. I mean, it was just so cool we got to do that. It was just, it was such a precarious time in our lives.
Yeah.
Like it being 20, I almost said 19, 20, 21, and us like just stepping out into the world again. That third person in the show, by the way, it must be said, is the great Brianna Marie Parham, who was so brilliant playing the title role of Regina Comet. She was so funny and she brought so much to it. We really couldn't have done it without Brie, and I just want to make sure that I say that because I worship her and I think she should have 3 Tonys by now. That's what I think.
Correct. I think you should all have one at this point. My God. Well, speaking of you singing the doors off of the place, you have a pretty extensive list of Broadway credits that you have racked up, not just in straight plays, but in musicals. And I really want to hear about your experience in doing Spring Awakening and waitress. I would love to hear maybe the difference in working on a show where you have to be ready to sing 8 times a week as opposed to doing something that's maybe more dramatically difficult.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, God, I love going to the theater and not singing. What a joy. It is the greatest. Oh my God. Right now I feel like never make me do a musical again.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously I'll do musicals again. I love them with all my heart. But it is pretty great to not have to sing. But it's funny with both Spring Awakening and Waitress. They were both at the Lena Horne Theater. When I was there was the Brooks Atkinson Theater. And in both of those shows, I stood on a chair and sang. Isn't that fun?
Oh, yes, you did.
In the middle, yes, in the middle of the same stage. There were very, very, very different experiences, and they were very big life experiences, meaning full of great adventures and full of huge challenges and full of good times and bad times. But I'm here.
Here.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can tell you about Spring Awakening specifically. That came at a really interesting time in my life too, because I was feeling a little cast aside, a little disillusioned. I think at the time I had a broken heart from a failed relationship, and that show healed me. I had moved out to LA because we all go west to find ourselves, don't we?
Look to the western sky, to quote one green witch.
Yes, who I will play one day.
Correct.
Yeah. That show brought me back to New York, and it brought me back to Broadway. I mean, my first Broadway outing was Lysistrata Jones, which was such a major experience for me, being so young and having my dream come true, but then it closing so quickly,
yes.
And I was so heartbroken at the time, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I think that heartbreak really lasted through finally being in Spring Awakening and feeling like I got to have... even though Lysistrata Jones was so special and it's nothing against the show, I think the show was a great show. It just, it just the timing didn't work out.
Sure.
I think, but it was so great that I got to go back to Broadway and have that dream happen in a way that made me feel, helped me reclaim my self-esteem, I should say.
Sure.
I think when I was young too, and my show didn't do well, I thought that was a reflection of me. Mm-hmm. Even if I knew it intellectually that it wasn't, it was really hard for me to separate those things.
Sure.
I thought, the show was a flop, that means I'm a flop. Mm. And I had a really hard time figuring out who I was in the wake of all of that. And Spring Awakening gave me a chance to kind of reclaim my strength there.
That's amazing. So did you start with the show in LA before it transferred to New York?
I did, mostly, but there were 2 LA runs. There was one that was at a 99-seat theater, and then it moved to a larger venue. And so I didn't do that first production, but then I was with it when it moved to the bigger theater, the Wallace Annenberg. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was there, and Andy Mientus and Chris Rodriguez and a few other people. And so then we transferred, and it was just the most unbelievable experience. I feel like all of our hearts were just broken open in the most beautiful way. Mm-hmm. And being thrown into a deaf world, and the deaf cast members being thrown into the world of musicals, yes. And trying to figure out what that means for them and their bodies, and how we all can help each other operate together and find this. That was the magic of that show, is finding that midpoint between our worlds.
Yeah, and for listeners who might not be familiar, the show was created by the company Deaf West, who does really beautiful creations of shows or reimaginations of shows that feature deaf actors in roles that they may not have been put in before, simply because of the fact that they are deaf. And I think it's a fascinating addition to the theater community, and I just was in awe of this show. But did you guys know when you started? Did you know that you had something that was special enough to cross the country and have a Broadway run?
I mean, it's weird because, like, I imagine anybody listening to this, for the most part, has had some brush with theater.
Yeah.
And we know when something is special to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anyone out there is going to care, right? Like, the number of, like, songs I've written in my bedroom, but how many people have cared about those particular songs is a microcosmic way to explain how that feels. I knew that show felt really important to me because it was introducing me to some major players in my life in terms of friendship and collaboration. And I didn't know how people were going to take to it. I had no idea. I just knew that it was important. And also, the people in theater are, people in theater are like, they're critics until proven otherwise.
Yes.
So at first the buzz was like, a revival already? Too soon. Get out of here. And then I think once people saw what Michael Arden and Def West and this whole cast and creative team had done, I think they were able to embrace the show. But everybody is, everyone crosses their arms at first until,
Sure.
Yeah. And I think we're all guilty of it. I mean, how many, people are saying, like, oh, that show opened. What have you heard? Is it good? And there's just a little bit of, like, I'm judging it. Should I judge it? Okay, all right, it's good. All right.
Yes. Whatever do you mean? I would never judge a show on this podcast.
No, never. Not on the podcast.
Not on the podcast. Not while we're recording.
Not on my potty, guys. That's right.
Well, I mean, that show was absolutely beautiful, and I think it really, that show came at the correct time. That revival may not have felt like it was at the right time, or it might have felt like, is this too soon? But I feel like it blew open the possibilities of what was going to be put on Broadway at that time.
That's really cool. I hope so. I mean, I hope so. It's been very cool to see in the years following. I think there have been a number of opportunities for deaf performers, and now we're seeing more opportunities for performers with other disabilities.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so important that we are always challenging ourselves to make sure that many different stories and different types of people are getting to tell those stories. And
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying anything controversial. We all know this,
No.
but it's great. It's so great that Spring Awakening could be a part of that conversation.
Right. I mean, and especially because it's a show that kind of has this cult following. Like, if you love the show, you love it. So I think that was a really, really great, like, door opener. And speaking of shows that have a rather cult-like following, you got to play Bach in Wicked. Would you tell me about this show, please?
Sure. I didn't know which direction that was going to go because my career's been so wild, and you could have said like one of 4 shows there that have had weird cult followings,
Yes.
and I just didn't know what you were about to say. Yeah, I loved being in Wicked. I absolutely loved it. I toured with the show in 2013 and 14. And I did it with my witches were Jennifer Denoya and Haley Pachun, both legends.
Yes.
Both incredible in their roles. And I mean, what can I say? You know what was cool about being in that show is it was a hit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't done a lot of things that were just like big old hits.
Totally.
most of the stuff I've done is like I've done a lot of cool things, but I've done things that were more on the scrappy side, and it was cool to look out into the audience, and every performance, every seat was filled, and if we saw one or two empty seats, we'd be like, "Uh-oh, you guys, I'm seeing a couple empty seats. We're only at 99 capacity."
Of course. In like McKeesport, Pennsylvania or something. You're like,
Exactly.
uh-oh.
Exactly. But I really liked it. I really loved that show brought out my inner child in a pretty beautiful way. And even when I got tired of being on the road, or being on the road was hard. It was a little lonely.
Yeah. Was that your first national tour?
Yeah, yeah. That's the only national tour I've done. I've done a lot of like regional gigs around the country, but I've never done a tour outside of that. Well, I guess that's mostly true. Yeah, but it was an odd experience being on tour, and I don't know if that life is really for me. But I'm thankful I did it. But the thing I could keep connecting to was how much I loved being in Wicked.
I love
And I
that.
could keep connecting to looking out into the audience and seeing these little kids who were seeing their first show ever, and they had stars in their eyes, and and it was just magic, and so even when I was feeling a little bit jaded, I would always try to connect to those kids out there, because I am still those kids.
Yes.
Right, we all are in a way.
Yeah, 100%. And I like it's funny because now as I get older and I get to be friends with people who are in and out of shows like Wicked, it's like it gets so much more casual, but at the same time I'm still like, you did Wicked, that's so silly. Like it's like the biggest fucking dream show of my life. And even if I just got to like do a twirl in the ensemble once, I would be just I would be done.
You'd
It'd
be
be
so
great.
good. I honestly think you should be Shen Shen, and like you'd be a really good Shen Shen and like Morrible cover,
Thank
right?
you.
And then
That would be the
and then
ultimate dream.
you'd be incredible, and then you'd eventually, like, as you get older, then work your way up to like a full-time Morrible.
Full-time Morrible, absolutely. Longest running at the Gershwin. The tea. Well, I had Carrie St. Louis on the pod, and she was also
she's
talking.
lovely.
She's a gem, and she was also telling me just about how, like, even when it gets really hard when you're on the road and you're just like huffing, you take a step back and you're like, I'm fucking Glinda. I'm in the bubble. Like, it just, shows like that are so wild to me. But speaking of other shows, I want to hear about your experience with Wicked, not with Wicked, with Waitress, because
Sure.
you got to play Ogie, and it's such a fun, like, silly, cutesy role. Can you tell me about that experience?
Totally. Well, the best part of that experience was I did it opposite Lena Klingeman, who played Dawn, and she's still one of my very good friends. And I just, man, she was my rock in that show, and I just loved being there with her. And I think she's a brilliant actor and artist, and so that was one of my favorite parts. But that was another one where I also felt like I felt so excited that I was in a show that people just liked the show. People were there to see that show. I've done a lot of new work, and so it's always a little bit touch and go with whether or not people are liking the show.
Sure.
But that was It's funny, the two times that I've replaced were in Wicked and in Waitress. And those were both originated by the same actor.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping I never play another role that he plays,
Chris
though.
Fitzgerald.
I'd like to make my own way. Yeah, he can have his corner. I'll take mine.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? I also got to do it with Al Roker, who was
Yes, you
he
did.
played he played Old Joe. Yeah, Al was so awesome. He was great in the show. First off, I mean, yes, that's obviously stunt casting, and it's something that we as theater people, it'd be easy for us to sort of roll our eyes at that.
Uh-huh.
But Al was great. He was great in the show.
Love.
And he was so kind. His dressing room door was always open, and the person you see on TV is really the person he is.
Aw.
He was so sweet to all of us. he knew everybody's name. He wanted to know all about you and your family and your life, and he was so giddy to be there and to be in a Broadway show, and it was just such a sweet time. It was very special, and it also, I will say this. I guess I'm sort of realizing this now, but each of the Broadway shows I've done, I think, have come at a time when I felt like I was at a sort of crossroads in my life, when I was having this sort of emotional transformation, and then the show came. Like when I did Waitress, I had the audition. I was living in LA again. I've gone back and forth a bit from LA, but I was living there again and ended up having a pretty bad time in LA. And I was coming home once again feeling a little bit heartbroken. And the day after I came home was my Waitress audition. So it felt like, even though my heart was hurting so much, it was a way that New York to me was saying, hey, you belong here. This is your home. Similarly, with the show I'm in now, I went through, as I think maybe many of us did during the pandemic, I've gone through a lot of issues with self-esteem.
Yeah.
and I've had a really tricky time these last couple of years, and had some really tough things happen. And when this audition process came along, and this was the long and for Goodnight Oscar, it was a challenging audition process, 2 months of it. I had to really search within myself to know that I could do this, to believe in myself. I was only up against myself, and I had to really pull up from within, and also release the need to get this role, to know that I don't need this to feel good about myself,
Totally.
but I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be. And then this show happened, and it felt like it was a way of that the universe said to me once again, hey, I see you, and you there's a place for you. I don't know. Each one of these shows has come at a time when I am coming out of heartbreak. That has happened every time for me.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's so fascinating. Well, and I think it's kind of, honestly, just like poetic in the nature of being a performer and being a creative person. It's just like you take what happens to you in stride, and it only adds to your experience moving forward with creation and collaborating with artists and other people. I think it's really cool. And I'm just so proud of you. You work so hard, and you do so much. You have your fingers in so many pies, and it always feels like you have something on the burner. But when I saw the cast announcement for Goodnight Oscar, I was so thrilled for you. I mean, it's just such a big step and such a big leap. So I cannot wait to see it. Can I ask you about your experience as an openly queer artist?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to know maybe how it informs how you go about being a producer or someone on the like directorial creative side of a project.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially in my early 20s, I was trying so hard at different points to lower my voice and to pass as straight and to do whatever I could to fit into what I thought people wanted me to be. And now as I've gotten, and I've only felt the way that that's held me back. And,
Of course.
yeah, and I've had some weird things with that. Like, I was on a soap opera for a year. I was on the
Bold and the Beautiful.
So bizarre. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool job and all, but I bring that up because I remember I used to get a lot of pretty mean messages from fans of The Bold and the Beautiful saying things like, "You're gay. We know you're gay. We found you out." Like, things like that, or like, "We don't believe you. You're gay." And I was like, "What?" And so then I remember on the show, I found myself trying to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to talk like this. I'm going to try to really like bring it down here and try to convince everybody I'm straight. Like, what the fuck? It really fucked with my head. And I know there's like, yeah, we got there's acting. You know, it's okay to like play to be a gay person playing a straight character,
Right.
but but not from a place of shame.
Of course.
You know, that's where that was coming from. I was lowering my voice not because I thought the character had a lower voice, but because I felt ashamed. Um, so the way that I have tried to change this for myself is in my writing to be as queer as I can possibly be. With Indoor Boys and now with Summoning Sylvia and even with Regina Comet, I was writing roles that were just unabashedly gay and writing these people who have no issues with themselves. And they happen to be gay, and meanwhile they're living other stories.
Right.
Like you and I, Jake, and so many listeners happen to be queer, some version of queer, and yet we are more than our queerness, and we are living full lives that are multidimensional.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm trying to do in my writing. And so that's my way of healing from that kind of trauma, of feeling like I have to fit in a box. If I can write these things for myself or write these things for other people to express that queerness and to normalize that queerness and to make those kids out there who feel like they don't see themselves in media, to give them a place to see themselves, then I think I'll have done something useful with my life, and I'll have helped to heal those wounds within me when I so often as a kid felt like I don't see myself anywhere. You know,
Yeah.
the only place I saw myself was really Sean Hayes.
I
You
know.
know,
And
on Will and Grace.
I was gonna say, it's such an interesting thing too that you now get to play opposite him, because I think that he was one really predominant figure of that type of inner turmoil, and playing this like
Totally.
insanely effeminate and over the top queer man on TV, and then struggling with his own identity as a queer person, sort of like behind the scenes and maybe in the closet for a long time. And so I just think it's kind of beautiful that you guys get to share the stage together and, be unabashedly you.
Yeah, thanks. It's a real blessing that I get to be there with him, and also, Sean is a person, and to get to know that person and to see the way that he's worked to navigate all of this, and the way that he wants to celebrate what that, his accomplishment. He also wants to continually reinvent himself like the rest of us.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be stuck in one era or stuck in one thing, which none of us do.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm really trying hard to make sure I'm making things, especially what I'm making with Wes. We have a number of other projects that we have written that we're going to be making over the coming years that are all very, very queer.
Gorge.
And
we love to
we just
hear
want
it.
to we just want to make like a lot of really, really gay movies. That's what we want to make. Like really funny gay movies. That's our
yes.
goal. And some plays along the way too, and we'll see how it all unfolds.
Love.
But I just really hope that I can, especially for the kid that I was, I want to keep giving that kid places to look where he knows he's not alone.
Hell yeah. Well, Alex, I have a segment that I like to do exclusively for BroadwayWorld.com, which is a musical theater rapid fire questionnaire, not trivia,
Okay, great.
just a which do you prefer type of questionnaire.
Because we can do trivia, and I would just I do so well.
I honestly was like a little hesitant to even do this, because I was like, I should just be asking like what theater had this show in 1980, whatever, because
The Mark Hellinger.
exactly. Okay, so are you ready to answer these questions?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Sondheim.
Sweatpants or jeans?
Currently sweatpants and in public jeans.
Okay. Do you have a favorite musical?
Oh, the first one that comes to mind is The Light in the Piazza.
Ah, absolutely. What about a least favorite musical?
Oh no. Um,
Spill the
least,
beans.
least favorite musical? I I I don't know. I have to pass.
Okay.
I have to pass.
Okay. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Oh, I'm a night owl, like hands down.
What is the craziest thing a director has ever asked you to do?
Oh gosh. Here's an upsetting story. One time a director called me the R word.
No. In rehearsal?
Wait, yeah, during a note session.
Oh
It's
no.
yeah, really awful. Really
Oh
awful.
my god, that's horrible. Gross.
Yeah.
Um, okay, golden age or contemporary?
Well, contemporary. I'm a contemporary boy.
Well, sure, sure. What is the favorite role you've ever played?
Oh, I loved playing well, it's kind of a cop out, Nate in Indoor Boys, because, Wes and I wrote it.
Totally.
I, yeah.
And it was so fucking funny.
Thanks.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What is the hardest show you've ever done?
Spring Awakening is up there.
For sure.
That was hard. That was so hard. It's part of what made it important is that like it was hard,
Could you name all of the Broadway theaters that you've performed in?
Yeah. I've performed once in the Walter Kerr, twice in the Lena Horne, and now in the Belasco.
Belasco for Goodnight Oscar. Have you ever missed an entrance?
Yes. When I was 12 years old, I was doing a regional production of the show Rags, which, oh God, I love that show.
Oh, yes.
The most glorious score ever, right? And I was playing David, and it was the scene where Nathan, the father, comes back, and it's that part, finally, David, nothing will hurt us again, for talking. So anyways, that part, and I was supposed to run on, and Rebecca was supposed to be like, David, look, it's your father, but I just wasn't there because I was with the other kids, and we were just playing cards in the dressing room.
Incredible.
I know, and from what I understand, the actors on stage were like, "So, how have you been? What's new?" And
No.
like I was 30 seconds late. They had to do like a 3-act play without me. Since then, I have not missed an entrance, and knock on wood, I never will again.
Incredible. Do you have a dream role?
I don't really. I really am excited by the roles that I can write for myself. Those are the roles that I want to play, and I just want to do new stuff. I want to keep doing new things. So I have dream people I want to work with, like actors I love and stuff like that. But no, the roles that I want to write, they have not been written yet, or they're on my computer.
They're on your desk right now. Love it. And
Yeah.
lastly, what is one thing that you would say to your younger self?
Well, it'd certainly be something about self-esteem, that all those mean voices are not true, and that you got to keep going, and that there is a place for you, and you don't have to feel bad about yourself every day. It's some version of that, and that there's a whole world waiting for you.
I love that. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the pod. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you on socials?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Jayke. I completely adore you, and I'm so happy to be talking to you. Really.
I love ya.
In terms of, I love you too. And in terms of finding me, I just honestly don't find me. No, I mean, I'm on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. That's the only social media thing that I'm on. And I'm at Alex J. Wyse is my name on there. And you can follow me, or you also don't have to, whatever's fine. Come see Goodnight Oscar.
Yes, come see Goodnight Oscar. We also need to all watch Summoning Sylvia. If you haven't seen Indoor Boys, you have to watch Indoor Boys. It's so fucking funny. And Alex, you're just a treat. Thank you so much for doing this.
Anything for you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You guys, that's it for another episode of Oh My Pod, you guys. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe anywhere you listen to the pod, and you can follow the show on Instagram at Oh My Pod, you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Bye!